Welcome. It's good to be together with everybody this morning, wherever and whenever you're listening to us online. It is good to have you join with us. My name's Patty Agnew. I'm the pastor here for the Park County United Methodist Churches, and the people of Grace and Holbrook and Pine Creek and Shields Valley United Methodist Churches welcome you. So it's good to join together. Our theme along this Lenten season is creating space in our lives for God. We talked about how when you build a fire, that you can't put the logs too close together, that they need some space between them for the fire to burn. And so in our lives, if we stack up all our tasks and activities too much, we don't have room for the Spirit to breathe life into us. And so we're talking about different ways we can create space for God. And so we're going to start with the idea of a fence. And I know you farmers and ranchers have a lot of experience with fences. Because fix and fence, I hear people talk about fix and fence all the time, and it probably makes no sense. You probably don't understand why it breaks here or there, but it does, and you always have to fix it. And I think about the fence that surrounds the backyard of the parsonage. There's this one particular section with our Livingston wind that is constantly wobbling, right? It can just be 10 miles an hour, which around here is nothing. And that fence is wobbling back and forth. I'm quite amazed it's still standing, but it is. So the psalmist in Psalm 62 talks about how he feels like he's a wobbly fence, right? Sometimes our lives are like that. The forces in our lives are kind of pushing us around and we're teetering back and forth. And even the way the psalm is written, you can see he starts in a place of trust and then teeters back to a place of affliction and then comes back to a place of trust, and he's kind of flip-flopping back and forth in the psalm. And so all of that, ultimately though, at the end, he discovers that when he rests in the stillness of God, that is where he finds strength and power and peace. And so learning to trust in God is what this is about. And so let's work our way through. Just have to check. Oh, see, I don't need that slide. Okay. Psalm 62, we're going to kind of make our way through it here. He begins by expressing his trust in God. For God alone, my soul waits in stillness. My salvation comes from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress, and I will never be shaken. And then you can see he falls back into his distress as his focus shifts to his difficult situation. How long will you assault me, men? Would all of you throw him? He goes with the third person, which messes me up. So how long will you assault a man? Would all of you throw him down? This leaning wall, this tottering fence, they fully intend to topple him from his lofty place. They take delight in lies. With their mouths they bless, but in their hearts they curse. That Selah is kind of a worship cue to sing a chorus. And so then he's teetering on the side of his affliction, and he flip-flops back to his place of trust. Find rest, O my soul, in God alone. My hope comes from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. And then once his anxiety and despair are no longer his focus, and God is his focus, then he discovers life and salvation and strength and steadiness, and that he can build his life on. So verse 7 continues. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock and my refuge. And then he turns to the community to teach the lesson to the community that's there. Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour your hearts out to him, for God is our refuge. Selah. And now he goes on to describe the contrast between God and people. Low-born men are but a breath. The high-born are but a lie. If weighed on a balance, they are nothing. You can't depend on people high up. You can't depend on people down low. Together, they are only a breath. Do not trust in extortion or take pride in stolen goods. Though your riches may increase, do not set your heart on them. And then he ends by sharing the wisdom he's learned through this whole process. One thing God has spoken, two things I have heard, that you, O God, are powerful, and that you, O Lord, are loving. All right. So that's a powerful couplet to end, that God is powerful and loving. Because if God was only powerful, then maybe we'd be afraid sometimes that power and justice would be enacted on us. But if God was only loving, then that would be weak, because to just be loving without any power behind it isn't always helpful. And so that couplet of God being both powerful and loving is a comfort to us. So for this author of this psalm, in his stillness, he finds God, and through that receives strength and serenity. So ultimately, serenity is the result of placing our trust in God at the core. And it was interesting, one of the commentaries wrote that trust in God is not a place to retreat to, rather it's the power center out of which we live our lives, right? So learning to find God within and rely upon that for the power that we need to live our lives, and to grant us that sense of serenity and peace, even in the midst of difficult situations. That's what the psalm is about. And so that first verse, for God alone, my soul waits in stillness. That one way that we can encounter God within and find God within is through the practice of centering prayer. And so we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to invite you to practice it with us today. And I'll just start by saying, this is not my go-to. Send me on a walk in nature, help me, I'll feed in a soup kitchen. Like, putting my faith in action is where I do well. So this concept of centering prayer is hard, and yet there's value in it. And so we should experiment and try and see if you can find help in it. And so let me describe it a little bit. So centering prayer is finding God within. Like, yeah, we believe God's out there and amongst us, but God is also within us. We're created in the image of God. And so how can we find God within? And that's what this is about. And it was created, defined, started by Father Thomas Keating. Now, usually when I read about these spiritual practices, you go back to the 1500s and back beyond that of when they kind of started. Thomas Keating lived in the 1970s. So this is a newer practice in the Christian tradition. And I'm sure it's not, but anyways, so it's kind of interesting. So here's the concept. Centering prayer is intended to put a stick in the spoke of our monkey mind. All right, so the Buddhists defined a monkey mind, that our brains just, we have a thought and we ruminate on it and we worry about it, and then we have another thought and we think about that, and that just our brains are going in all different directions all the time. Can you relate to that? That happens to me all the time, especially at night when I'm either trying to go to sleep or I wake up in the middle of the night, right? And so that's the monkey mind. We all have this monkey mind. And so centering prayer is trying to put a stick in the spoke to stop that monkey mind from going too wild. So other contemplative prayer practices, which also try to do that, try to get rid of your thoughts. But centering prayer is a different approach. Instead of trying to get rid of our thoughts, we receive them, we accept them, but then we let them go instead of going down the rabbit trail that they take us on, right? And so let me just take a guess that even while sitting here listening to me, you've thought, oh, I need to go to the grocery store on the way home and buy yada, 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 right? Or whatever. Like, we all get distracted. Our minds are always taking us different directions. And so this is the practice to just acknowledge that, like, okay, Patty, you have to go to the grocery store, but right now I'm not going to think about that. Right now I'm going to be focused on being here in the present. And so centering prayer helps us to do that. The concept is when you realize you're having a thought, to just let it go and come back into the presence of God. It's not a bad negative thing. So here's an example. One time Father Keating was teaching a group of people how to do this, and he led them in the practice. And then afterwards, this nun came up to him and she was really distressed. And she said to him, I'm such a failure. While you were leading in that, I must have had 10,000 thoughts go through my mind. I'm such a failure. And Thomas Keating replied, you're not a failure. You had 10,000 opportunities to return to God, right? And so this practice is teaching us that yeah, life's hard, we get distracted, we're worried, we're anxious, and we go in all these different directions. And this practice teaches us to come back to God. And every time we come back to that stillness within, we find that God's there. You will never come back and find God's gone another direction. God is always there. And so that's what this is all about, is letting go of the thoughts in our mind so we can focus on the presence of God and returning to God and knowing that God will always be there. So this is how we practice it, that you set an intention. So you do it on purpose, right? This isn't going to just happen randomly. So you set an intention that I'm going to spend the next however many minutes in centering prayer, and you just kind of commit yourself to doing that. Then you find a comfortable place to sit and kind of settle into your seat. You breathe a little bit, you close your eyes. And then, so a lot of this I learned from Cynthia Bourget, I think that's how you say her name. And so she suggests, if you're new to this, that you have a word that can help you come back to the presence of God. So when I did this at Grace this morning, my word was a phrase. It was, here I am, Lord. You might choose Jesus or great, whatever meaning is helpful for you. Love, so choose a word or a short little phrase so that when you're doing centering prayer and you recognize you're now thinking about your grocery list, you can just say, here I am, Lord, and you come back to that center place. And then you set for 20 minutes is the recommendation, and then set a chime for yourself to come out of that. And what's interesting to me too is that even Cynthia, who's been doing this a long, long time, the goal is not to do it longer and longer every day. She does it 20 minutes a day. So even after all these years, she does it 20 minutes a day. We're not trying to work up to an hour. We're not trying to be a monk and do this for 2 hours of time, 20 minutes a day. Having said that, when I tried this week, 20 minutes is a very long time if you're not inclined to do it, such as myself. So I would suggest kind of maybe starting with 5 minutes at a time and work your way up to 20 would be my recommendation. And then to come out of it, you might want to sing a little phrase from a song or say the Lord's Prayer or something to kind of re-enter back into your life and into the world. So we're going to try it. I'm going to offer an invitation, and once I have you close your eyes, just follow my voice and I'll lead you. I'm going to read through Be Still and Know That I'm God. And I think that's all I need to say. So you online, you don't have to be in a quiet place to do this. Of course, in a way it's kind of easier, but you can do this in anywhere, any place, because the quiet you need to find is within. It's not external. So you choose a word, have your word, and here we go. We're going to do for 3 minutes. And I've got a chime on my phone that will bring us back when we're done. Okay, so let's take a moment and explore centering prayer together. So settle into your seat, close your eyes. You're going to hear noises that maybe you don't usually hear, like the clock or kids playing. That's okay. Again, as you hear those things and recognize the thought, let it go and return back to God. And so take a few deep breaths to be present to yourself in this moment. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on us. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on us. You can join in. Melt us, mold us, fill us, use us. Spirit of the living God, fall fresh on us. Amen. Come back to this space. The invitation is to try this each day for, I'd say, 2 weeks to give it a chance. It's not the kind of thing we're gonna, I don't know, for me, it's gonna take me 2 weeks to get better at practicing it. So that's my invitation to you all. And I say that again with this confession that it's difficult. And also just a testimony that even for Cynthia, who wrote about this, it's not the kind of thing that once you come back, you feel like a new person. It's more what she says is she doesn't feel differently afterwards, but people around her tell her that since she started practicing this, she just has more peace about her. She operates with more intention and more focus. So people around her notice more of a difference than she notices in herself. So try it for a couple weeks. See if it works for you. If it doesn't, that's fine, but let's all give it a try together. Yeah, so we're now going to sing our closing hymn, which is Come and Find the Quiet Center.